Hello and welcome. I'm Paul Amos, founder of The Redeemed. The Redeemed is an organization and a community of men who've come together to discuss life's difficulties as well as our triumph over those difficulties. Today we have a very special guest, and we'd like to welcome Jason McKenzie to the show. Jason, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul.
Awesome. Well, Jason, we'd like to start with you where we start with all our guests, if that's okay, and just ask you the question of what does redemption mean to you?
Redemption is, there's so many different depths of the redemption personally for me. I think about redeeming a bad day at work or a sale if I'm involved in that. Redeeming myself in a motorcycle race when I crash and I go down and come back and got to get back at it, and redeeming myself to get back up to the front. So for me, it's not only crashing or falling or failing, but it's even coming back stronger. So when I think of the word redemption, it's much different than just getting back to par. It means taking a lesson from that failure and making myself stronger than I was in the first place.
I like that. In all aspects of your life that you're using redemption in.
Absolutely.
Well, for a moment, tell me about the fact that you want to make the world a better place, and you're using your blessings and things that are happening in your life to do that. Tell us a little bit about how you're making the world a better place.
I feel like that, life is it's a wild roller coaster ride, no doubt. And anybody can relate to that, because I had an issue at one point in my life. I thought like I was kind of feel sorry for myself, and I was going through something thinking I was the only person going through it. And now that I've opening my eyes up a little more, I realize that life isn't easy for anyone. And no matter who it is, it's when I'm having my hardest days, I can look around and see people like dressing up and smiling and living life good, and then realizing that I don't know what they had to get through that day to get to that point, to bring joy and to put makeup on or to dress nice, or, when the first time I met you, like just realizing whatever you had to do to get to that coffee shop, it was not easy, and that inspires me. And so I try to be that inspiration for other people as well. If my opinion is, if we don't take our pain and our dark times and all the hurt that we go through, if we don't turn it into something good, then it was wasted. And I'm not willing to do that. I'm not going to let all that pain go in vain. It's not an option for me. I got to make the best of it, or I'm going to completely waste all that. And that's not okay.
Well, having heard your story and having had a chance to get to know you just a little bit, I know that there's tremendous power in it, but also tremendous feeling and sadness and different things in it. And I know that, we're going to talk about Natalie and your relationship, and maybe you can begin just by telling us how you guys met and a little bit about your relationship.
Yeah, for sure. So, Natalie, I met her at Ride on Bikes, the business I have in Uptown Columbus. She had hurt her ankle running and needed something else to do. So I meet a lot of people like that. They come in just trying to get a low impact exercise routine they can figure out. And when she walked in the first time, there's something about Natalie that had this ability of lighting up a room. So when she walks in, it's like, it almost like the music stops and the light focuses on her. She had a smile and these eyes, man, that could captivate you. And so the first time it kind of like caught me off guard, and, you got to be professional, right? We're out of business. You got to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do here. And that's how I met her originally, was just walking in the bike shop. And it led in to, communication, just, normal stuff. And then we kind of realized there was a connection there, and asked her on a bicycle riding date. And so we rode the Riverwalk. You're familiar with the Riverwalk, but for people that are not, we have a beautiful Riverwalk along the Chattahoochee River in downtown. And we were about 8 miles out at Oxbow Meadows, and we we're coming back. And I knew she was a little older than me, but I didn't know how much older. And so I asked her. She was like right behind me, I said, "How old are you anyway?" And she said 34. And I was like, ooh. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh man, this might not go as smooth as I thought. And she said, "How old are you?" And I said, 24. And she locked on the brakes and went to carrying on. And I can't go on a date with you. You're 10 years younger than me, and this whole thing. And I was like, what are you going to do? Not ride back with me? And she said, "If I knew how to get home, I wouldn't." And I was like, man, I got 8 miles to prove to her that I'm worthy. So that was our first experience. And it just led into, a really awesome relationship.
All right. So you kind of hit the trifecta. You graduated, you ended up buying Ride on Bikes or building Ride on Bikes and getting married all at almost the same time. How did you handle that?
Man, I don't know why, Paul, but for some reason I do it like this. It's like I'm all in, it's like things, I feel like we're always working on little relationships and little deals all the time. And then for some reason it seems to all collide for me at once. I'm in a situation currently right now that's happening very similar. It's like, here we are again, everything happens at one time. So I actually just got really, really excited during that time period. I graduated college. Another thing that happened the same day that I graduated college, we hit $1 million in our business for the first time.
Wow.
That was a really big thing to celebrate for me at a bicycle shop. I couldn't believe that was even possible. And then the engagement happened 10 days after, which I'd already planned. I did not know I was going to become owner. The two owners of the Ride on Bikes at the time, they were worried a little bit that I was going to leave, that I graduated, because that was my plans, and they offered it to me, a third of the business at the time. And so I wasn't expecting it, and I just got so excited about life. My business was doing well. Now it was mine. I wasn't just getting a salary employee, which I think I made more money as a salary employee now that I know what I know. But and then the engagement and starting this life with Natalie. So, man, really and truly, it seems overwhelming when I tell you all that at one time, but I was just pumped on life, and I was so excited about everything that was happening.
So it was around a year, unfortunately, when you ended up losing Natalie. What can you tell us about that situation and what ultimately happened? Yeah,
man, I'm not going to sit here and like paint a picture that the relationship was perfect. I guess nobody ever, you can look at Instagram and there was never a problem, obviously. But, we were having our normal relationship troubles. It wasn't anything major. We were trying to get pregnant. We really wanted to have a family. And with her at this point being 36, I felt like our timeline was a little shorter. She felt that way as well. I wasn't as like caught up on we had to have our own child. I was completely 100% dialed in with adopting if that was something we could do, but I don't think that was in her plans, and that was one of our challenges that we were having, one of the things we were fighting. And leading up to losing Natalie, we were having these issues where she was having some blackouts, and she just wouldn't remember things that would happen like the night before. It was almost like she had drank too much, but that wasn't the case. We weren't drinking. So there was no alcohol involved at all. And that was kind of it was alarming, that what was going on. And so we got her a doctor's appointment, and they thought it was stress-based. And they told her to try as an antidepressant called Lexapro. That they thought it was stress. And, this is where I could tell you, obviously, about a lot of what we're talking about today. I can tell you what happened, and then obviously looking back, I wish I'd have handled things way differently, but this is what happened, and just the story is the story now. But she came to me and she said, "What do you think about this medicine?" And Paul, I told her, I said, "I don't know. Ask me bicycle questions. I know bicycles. If they say you should take it, take it." And I didn't look into it. I did zero research. I didn't know side effects. I didn't know anything. And she started taking it on a Monday, and had a bad stomach issues on Tuesday, migraine on Wednesday. On Thursday, we had a disagreement. And Thursday night, the disagreement wasn't going well, man. And I was right when I look back at it, the actual argument as far as the who's right or wrong, but at what cost, I was never able to understand the weight that this disagreement would have. And it wasn't like it wasn't yelling or anything like that. It wasn't threatening, no divorce, nothing like that. It was just a normal disagreement. But I didn't understand what she was dealing with internally and the battle that she was having. And so I drove to Albany and stayed with my family, my mom, my dad, my brother, and just kind of went and got my head clear. And when I was walking out of the house, Natalie said, "Don't leave me. I need you." And I don't know, man. I felt like I was doing the right thing for a long term of our relationship. I thought I was kind of like setting the standard of like what I expected out of a relationship, and I walked out, and I didn't do what she asked me to, and I didn't answer her phone call when she called me and texted me multiple times. And golly, sorry, I didn't mean to get emotional on you. It feels like 12 years you would be used to telling the story, but she had called me multiple times on the way home that night, and I did call her best friend and asked her to go check on her. I was worried about her, not to the extent of what happened. I never dreamed that would be part of it, but just wanted her to have somebody close. And the next morning I woke up and I had an understanding more, and I called her and I left her a voicemail, and the voicemail said something to the effect of how much I loved her, and I've been really thinking about it. And in our vows, I agreed in sickness and in health, and she did too. And she was just sick right now, and that we were going to work this out no matter what it took, and that I just needed a night to think about it. Well, I found out later that I was 17 minutes too late. Natalie had gone to a store in town and bought a gun and came home and committed suicide in our house. I didn't find out till about 10 o'clock that night. I'm kind of jumping around timelines, but that was that's what happened, man. I tried to call her all day. I thought she was upset with me. I didn't really think that I never thought anything would have happened. I just thought she just didn't want to talk to me. And then when at dinner that night, I was still in Albany, and her dad called me. Her dad's Natalie was a big daddy's girl, man. She was crazy about her dad. He lives down in South Florida. And when he said he couldn't get in touch with her, that was when I realized something had happened. Something was wrong. Again, didn't think this. I thought maybe the medicine made her sick or something. And things escalated there to me to find out what had happened.
Wow. Thank you for being willing to share that. That is incredibly heavy. I mean, how do you deal with the feelings that come with that? I mean, I can imagine there's pain, hurt, guilt, all kinds of things.
I guess this happens to all of us. There's an amount of people everyone just about says there's nothing you could do. And Paul, I know different. I was there. I could have said something different. I could have stayed. I could have done different. Now, I obviously didn't know the circumstance. I didn't know the cards that I was being dealt. And if I knew now, of course, I would handle everything completely different. I would do all that. But I do know I could have done something different. I could have handled it different. And I still have some dark moments with that, of like going through and thinking about it. And there's a guilt that comes with it. That I know I could have handled things differently. But what I finally get, and I think about the word redemption and going back to this and about what we originally started talking about, I can't fix that. There's nothing I can do. It doesn't matter how much I beat myself up. There's nothing I can do to go back and fix what happened. All I can do is learn from it, not make the mistake again, and get better. And that's what I do, man. I can tell you some stories, man, that's happened since then where I saw Natalie's eyes in somebody else and realized that maybe they're struggling. Maybe they are. And the fact is, I don't care how well you know somebody. You don't know what they're going through. I was with this girl every day. I could not be any closer. We slept in the same bed every night. I didn't know what she was dealing with. And now that I understand that in my life, man, the way I approach people, no matter how ugly and rude or anything you can imagine, is different. I see things differently, and I do my best to take that mistake that I made leading up to that and the things I've learned from it. And I just do my best to do better moving forward and give people more grace, and in turn give myself grace, because that's where she messed up. She didn't give herself grace in some situations. So not only learn from my mistake, but learn from hers as well.
You seem to have taken on a lot, and taken on more than people probably advised you to take on with that. I mean, you can't blame yourself for that situation, and that mental illness is something that people deal with. I deal with, and it's a struggle for all of us. But I can imagine that during this dark period that you had to have thought about questioning God. what was your relationship like with God during all of this and in the aftermath of this?
Yeah, I really like this question because I was working with Pastor Keith Cower at the time. He was at Christ Community at that time, and he was the one that had married us. He's the one that did marriage counseling with us, and he was the one that preached the funeral. And he was the one that was kind of that. He would come downtown and just go walk with me. I didn't know what to do, man, and he gave me something one day that I'll never ever forget. I will say this: I've never questioned if God was real. That was never my thing. I was so angry. Natalie had both of her Bibles open on the bed when she did this. She had been highlighting, she'd been reading, she was searching frantically. And I just didn't understand. I still don't understand. I don't know why. I still don't. I got some ideas. It seems like there's some clarity just over the last year, which we'll get to. But, Keith finally told me, he said, Jason, as long as you continue to believe, it's okay to be angry. And man, I had never thought about that. I was actually upset with myself, and I felt like I was angry with God, and that was almost like a sin, like that I wasn't supposed to be that way. And I was kind of beating myself up even more. So not only am I in this dark place and now I'm angry, now I feel like I shouldn't be angry, and that it just like compounds things. And he gave me Keith gave me the understanding that being angry is okay as long as I don't lose the faith that it's real and believe. And about my relationship with God, I have this thing. I feel like I get really close sometimes, and then I get far away. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a certain act that pushes me away or brings me closer. But sometimes I feel like me and God are communicating and we're talking both ways. And sometimes I feel like I'm the only one talking, and I'm searching for it. I don't understand that always, but I'm either close or far away, and I'm always trying to get closer no matter where it is.
Yeah, those periods of walking in the wilderness or in the darkness without not feeling God's presence necessarily the way we do when he's in periods of talking to us, those are difficult times to understand. And I can imagine that during your difficult time, something of this magnitude that had to be extremely difficult. You have a unique opportunity, and I know this is something that you've discussed that is in your heart, which is helping others in these circumstances. Tell me a little bit about how you've been able to help others that are going through similar stuff to what you've been through.
So, Paul, it was in November of 2020, and I was at a birthday dinner for my uncle, and I got sat at the end of the table with a lady that I didn't know. And, I just started up a conversation like anybody would. And I found out that she worked with a suicide hotline. And, it sounds super insensitive I didn't know how I was trying to talk to. I was like, how's business? Like a terrible question to ask that. But, and she's like, are you serious? And I was like, well, I don't mean it like that. I just mean how are calls, or how things better or worse. And she's like, Jason, calls are up 800% this year.
What?
And this is in November of 2020. And this is right in the middle of COVID. And as you know, man, people got darker than normal. And they didn't have access to go get help. And it was just a really tough time. And during that time, a friend of mine that owns a business in town, he committed suicide 2 miles away from me. Our assistant district attorney, a half a mile in the government center, committed suicide, and my banker committed suicide, all in a 6-week period. And when I was talking to her, I realized that night that I'm part of the problem. It had been almost 10 years since I lost Natalie, and I wasn't talking about it. And the people that had not met me in the last few years, they didn't even know my story. And suicide in general is such it's a subject. It's kind of like a taboo subject. You're not supposed to talk about it. And it's uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable to talk about it. Even in a situation where me and you are just friends talking, it's still uncomfortable. And the thoughts, you don't know if you're supposed to talk about it, or is it going to egg on things? Are you going to give someone the idea? And I'd always just got quiet. And when I realized that I wasn't taking all the pain, I wasn't taking Natalie's pain and my family's pain, and her family and her friends' pain, and I had just put it away, and it was being wasted. I decided I called my good friend of mine, Jonathan Giles. He owns In Color with a film production company. He's phenomenal. And I said, man, we got to tell this story. And so we did a video. It's an 11-minute video. It seems long. And we talk about this story, and we talk about how some of the things that I do to get through it. And Paul, was so nervous to share it, man, because it was like the first time I just put my heart out there, and I was just vulnerable. It wasn't just a kid at a bicycle shop on Instagram that races motorcycles and flies airplanes. You know, I always just paint this really, really perfect picture of nothing was ever wrong. And everybody just knows my laugh, and they don't know about any darkness. And it was at 9:30 at night on the 10-year anniversary, and I finally got the courage up to post it. And it was like, I was like, and I did it, and I went to bed. I didn't know what else to do. I was so nervous. I mean, I could have thrown up. I was so nervous about it. And it exploded. It reached people all over the world. And viral, as far as I know how viral can go, I think it ended up being like somewhere in the 30,000 view range. And I didn't expect that. And what happened from there is people from all over the world I didn't know, they realized they felt like they had a connection to me. They thought they knew me. And it was, they were calling me on like Facebook Messenger, for example, and reaching out to me that were actually suicidal. And I wasn't prepared for that. So I called the lady I had met at the dinner I told you about earlier, and I asked for some training, and she put me through, not the training well enough to deal with the situation, but how to get them to her and to the next step. And there was a lot of moments they didn't feel comfortable calling a 1-800 number, not knowing who it was on the other line, but they thought they knew me now because they got a peek into my heart, into my real darkness. And from there, it just kind of turned into a lot of different things, you know, and I realized that through this and through the Like Lexie project, which I want to talk more about, I don't want to, I always feel like this is going to come out wrong. I haven't said it publicly yet, but there's a part of me that believes that Natalie's sacrifice has happened to save thousands of people's lives. And God has given me the ability for public speaking and given me the ability for a platform that I'm able to travel around and do things with, and put her in my life and maybe me in her life. And with her sacrifice, I'm able to reach people that the average person is not able to reach. I'm not sure if that comes off good, but yeah.
I think it makes total sense.
And I think that God's given me the gift to speak and given me the gift of trust and the gift of gab, if you will, you know, being in retail for 20 years. And he's given me this incredible story and this powerful thing that's happened. It's my obligation, you know, and it's my job to make sure that I'm doing what he's asking me to do. And, you know, saving souls is one way of looking at it. You know, it's like you can have someone that's saved, but I'm literally trying to save their life. You know, I'm literally trying to save their life. And then, it's a tall order. It's a tall task, but I feel we're making a difference.
That's incredible. I can imagine though, in the beginning, before you got that training or even after you got that training, that it's a battle to keep your own emotional spirits high, talking to all these people who are feeling these sense of loss and this sense of suicide. How do you bolster your spirits to make sure when you're talking to people and with all these connections and opportunities, you know, what do you do to keep yourself strong during these periods of time?
You know, man, it's when you say that, it kind of reminds me of I felt very selfish at first, the first 10 years, because I didn't want to put myself in that arena. People would ask me to speak at, you know, suicide prevention programs and things like that, and I just avoided it like the plague. I look back at that as it was a selfish, but I needed to be that way. I wasn't ready yet. So that was a hard thing. I had to really build up my, make sure my mission was crystal clear, what I was trying to do, and not just tell a sad story, but understand the mission, you know? And I still have hard days, man, when I hear some of these kids' stories that I'm working with right now. And, you know, and we're, you know, you're going to lose people. And if you're going to put yourself in that arena of suicide, you're going to deal with it. It's just something I have to it's part of my life now. It's part of my story, and I'm choosing to embrace it and do everything I can to help. But it's kind of like I said earlier, it's like when on my darkest days, all I have to do is just look around and see people that are enjoying life. And I know, like Paul, I don't know your story. I truly don't, to the depths of it. But to see you doing what you're doing right now, here you are, you've gotten up this morning, you've you got a nice shirt on, you came in, you have chosen to take this time and your resources to make the world a better place. And that inspires me, man. And that's just you. And I can go anywhere down the road and see people that are putting effort into life and that are making a difference. And no matter how hard it was to get where you are today, somehow you found the courage to get to where you are and to make a difference. And that inspires me so much. So as soon as I start dragging, I try to look to other people for inspiration.
First of all, I really appreciate you saying that. And I'm honored that you, of all people, would think that. It is an amazing opportunity to give back. This whole idea of the redeemed in many ways started because so many wonderful people invested in me and wanted to see me get to a place that is better than where I once was. And, turning that corner and beginning in 2019 with an idea that got completely thrown sideways by COVID and eventually turned into now what is, podcasts and small groups and an upcoming conference and all types of things really is God's blessing. And so much like your life that I've heard you say, it's blossomed over the years and it's really transformed into something bigger than what you expected. I hope that's what God continues to want for us. And I'm humbled that you say that. When I think about God and the role he plays in our life, grace is one of the most important things that he gives us. And I'm just curious kind of the role about grace is played in your life, both with God and with giving grace to others.
Yeah. I'll tell you a short story. I feel like that's the best way sometimes to get a point. I had a friend and a business partner that had, we were really close. Like I went and stayed at his grandparents' house in another part of the country, and we just became really good friends. And completely caught me off guard. He took money out of our account and disappeared, and took advantage of a bunch of people by using my name to get in the door. And man, that's the short version of how things went very, very bad. And this was 4 years after I had lost Natalie. And at that time, I wasn't even thinking anything about it. And Paul, I was so angry, man. I'm from Leesburg, Georgia. We go to the Shell station parking lot and fight it out. That's what we did growing up. So in my mind, even as an adult, man, I was so angry. I wanted to physically fight. I know that sounds very immature, but I did. I was so angry. He had I go through these phases of getting my feelings hurt and then angry, and then there's another side of it on the other side. But I was in the angry cell, and I heard he was back in town, and I went and sat at his apartment front steps for 6 hours, and I waited to physically fight. And when he got there finally, I stood up to approach him, and I don't know how to explain this to you, but I'd never seen this before, but I saw Natalie's eyes in his eyes. The last time I had talked to her, I could see it. And instead of getting aggressive, I got overwhelmed, and I gave him a hug instead. And he broke down. And he's a super awesome, special forces, tough guy, and he broke down emotional. And he literally just put his head in my shoulder. And all I said to him, I said, man, I don't know why you did what you did, but I would have given you anything. I'm not sure why you did what you did. But man, moving forward, if you ever need something, you just got to ask. Well, Paul, he left. He disappeared. We didn't talk about it anymore. He told me a couple things that happened, in his life that night, and I just had to let it go. Well, 7 years later, which is a couple years ago now, I was in Atlanta, and I was getting ready to go out with some friends for a birthday dinner, and I got a PayPal notification. And this guy had sent me all the money that he owed me. Wow. And heard from him since. I didn't expect it, never dreamed of it. And he sent me a very long message and apologized to me for how he treated me during that time. And he said to everyone at that time, something about, me right then, just forgiving him and letting it go. It turned him around. And I know as I sit here, he didn't say this. I believe with all my heart he was suicidal at that point. He had lost everything, and he had lost even his only friend that he had. And God gave me that view of Natalie's eyes in him that night to give him grace. And since then, we've rekindled our friendship, to an extent. And he's doing very well. He's very successful now. And he doesn't live here anymore. But, I think that story right there, if we could take that story, and it goes back to that redemption again that we just talked about. It's, I was, thank God, I didn't make the same mistake again. I was right. Once again, I was right. He stole money from me. He used my name, and I had every right, if you will, to tear him down, and tell him how right I was and how wrong he was. But I'd already learned that lesson, thankfully, and I didn't have to learn it again. And being right is not always, the cost is not always worth it, if that makes sense.
One of the questions I was going to ask you when you first started to talk about this business partner who's stolen from you is about trust. But there's something about the restoration of that trust when you get that PayPal payment, but you were patient, and maybe because you thought you would never get anything from it in the first place. But for so many of us, our timeline for God's response is quick, and an expectation and a hope of things to be turned around in a moment. It's been 12 years since you lost Natalie, 7 years you waited for that money. Tell me a little bit about how you've been able to exhibit such patience and what it's meant for your own personal development.
Man, you don't even know this yet, so this is going to catch you off guard for sure. But right now, the beginning of this year, for my New Year's resolutions for 2023, my one thing I wanted to work on in my prayer was to ask for more patience. And I want to get more solid that nothing can get me off of my game. It doesn't matter a vendor or an employee situation or a customer or anything. And I asked for it, and I feel like God has gave me a test. So I don't know if you can tell on the cameras, I'm covered in poison ivy.
Oh, no.
Eyes just got swollen out. I've been in the hospital twice now in the last 2 weeks over it. I cut a tree up and then burned it and got it in my system. So it's literally my face, everything down to my ankles. And man, the last 16 days have been trying, to say the least. There's been no sleep and steroids and the itching and I could go on and on. And I think that, we talk about if you ask for strength, God tests you. He gives you things to overcome to get stronger. And if you ask for patience, he builds it. He's doing exactly what I've asked him to do. He is, and we always have room to grow. You're right. I didn't expect anything from my friend. I did that to move on and to just let that go. And I feel like God rewarded me for it. He did financially. It was not that I expected it, but he did reward me for it. And it's really obvious when you look back and see that you handled something correctly, or when you handle something incorrectly, and the consequences of either side. And then it gives you the confidence to make better decisions moving forward. Say, all right, well, that didn't work. This is how I screwed this up, or I did the right thing and the patience really paid off. And that's where I feel like I get it from. I can kind of dig in and try to see the bigger picture.
I appreciate that. That is great wisdom, and great to know that you have also prayed for patience. I'm going to be praying for you with this poison ivy thing. That just sounds awful. I mean, to be patient enough to come on this show and do this while you're dealing with that, maybe it's just a distraction, but gosh, that just sounds awful.
It was terrible, man. I can't believe it. I've had to start laughing. I've had a couple of breaking points, man, I don't know. My team at the bike shop's been so good taking care of me. And, I feel like a little kid again. I had to come to my mom's house to get into a clawfoot tub and, and salt baths and everything else, is trying to get some sanity back.
That is, I bet I bet I've definitely dealt with some poison ivy in my life, but I don't even want to tell a story when I hear that story. So that's a lot. Okay. So 12 years later, and you are now engaged. What a blessing that you have been able to find someone special in your life. Tell us a little bit about that and what it's meaning to you to be able to open up the next chapter in life for you.
Man, I actually just got chills when you said it out loud. It's weird to even hear someone say that I'm engaged and that there is another chapter. When I lost Natalie, I wasn't interested in another relationship. That was it for me. I had said, forever, and that was my intentions. There was no questions on that. And I've had a few relationships over the last, that decade. And one thing I think that I had done, I was kind of trying to put that part of my life, kind of quiet it down a little bit, the Natalie part, and I wasn't dealing with it internally. I wasn't talking about it. And when I released this video in 2021 on the social media world, I was single at that time, and that was what gave me the courage to do it. I was always worried about hurting my girlfriend's feelings or making them feel inadequate or talking about Natalie. And it's very strange. Like, a divorce is one thing. You didn't want to be with that person anymore. But when someone dies and you were still in love with them, that's very uncomfortable to talk about. It's very uncomfortable for your partner. And I didn't know how to handle it. I was always dancing around it. Well, when this video came out and then I started speaking publicly more about it, I met Renata, and I met her through, I have an adventure company where I take people around the world, and we go surfing in Costa Rica and skiing in Colorado and motorcycle riding across the country. We have these trips we do, and she had reached out, like several people do, about a trip and, just communicating again, and ended up having an opportunity to take her on a date. And Renata has a peace that she brings to any situation that she is so calming for me. And I need it, man, because I am wide open. I am like pinging all the time. I run at a very, very high RPM, and to have someone that balances that and has such a calming nature was very attractive at first, but more so now. Like today, man, is a perfect example. She is so proud of me for telling the story, and that you are interested in hearing it, and that she's encouraged me to tell this story and to help as many people as possible. And she doesn't have, there's no jealousy. There's no, and man, if I'm having a tough time, which I still do, some dates and some things, spur up, I don't know why. I can just be honest with her and tell her I'm having a hard time today, and Natalie's on my mind. And it's not that I want to be with Natalie today. It's not that, it's just, I can be honest. I don't have to hide my feelings with her. And it's incredible, man. And I think I've given her the opportunity of me just being super transparent. This is who I am. This is my story. I'm working through it, and I can do better. I'm going to keep trying to get better, and that she supports me in all those things. And saying all that is that because of my past, how much I appreciate her, man. And even the relationships I've had since Natalie, I've never been more confident in a decision to get married to this woman that I am right now. I'm just 100%, no doubt. It's exactly where I'm supposed to be. And, man, that feels, everyone always says when you know, I kind of thought that was a bunch of crap. And now I know it's the truth.
Well, congratulations, man. That is absolutely awesome. And we wish you guys the best. It's really neat to have somebody who can support you in your history, support you in your presence and in your future, in the present and in the future. And that's just, that's great. All right. So woven throughout this conversation so far, I've heard things like pilot, motorcycle races. Obviously you are a huge bicyclist. You have an adventure company. You have all these different things going on. So tell me about how adventure and physical fitness has played a role in your life and the role it's playing today in how you deal with and talk to people.
Yeah, it's interesting, man. When I lost Natalie, there was a thing that happened, and I didn't want to die. That's never been the case, but I kind of lost the fear of dying. which is it's a different place to be, you know. And I got a little bit more aggressive. I got into skydiving a lot at that point. I jumped 109 times, so I really got into that. That led into flying and becoming a pilot, and then winning motorcycle races as well. I've always ridden dirt bikes, and I started racing, so it kind of led into some things. And I also learned that in those moments of high adrenaline sports, my focus gets so into a little bit of a tunnel, and I'm not thinking about my past. I'm not thinking about the future. I am literally in the present. And something that slows down for me at that point, if you're not in the present in a skydiving situation, the consequences are tragic. Same thing in a motorcycle race or in an airplane. If you are not living in the now, then death is, injury or death is a big side effect of what could happen. So there's something about that that's addicting to me that gives me the break from my manic thoughts. And I just had, I race almost every other weekend. I'm out right now. I wasn't able to race yesterday. I went and supported, but I couldn't race because of stuff all over me. But that's what it's about for me. And the physical fitness part of it, I kind of have my life. I view my success in life in 4 different silos. I have the financial silo. I have my relationships, my physical well-being, my wellness, as far as in shape and that kind of thing, and then my spiritual side of things. And I'm always trying to get them in balance. I'm always, going into a situation where I'm one's always lacking, at least always. I'm always working on that. So making sure that I stay physically strong. Just in September, man, I did a challenge called the 75 Hard 75-day challenge, and man, I lost right at 30 pounds, like 29 and some change, and ended up cutting out alcohol completely out of my life. And I won't go back to that. I don't believe any reason to. And man, I feel so amazing, and I'm able to do more, and I'm able to be clear, and I'm able to make better decisions on the other 3 silos. I'm clear in my spirituality. I'm clear in my relationships, and my finances are better because of it, So wow. Yeah, it kind of dances around your question a little bit. But to me, the physical part, the adventure part is such a huge part of my life to keep me moving forward.
That's awesome. And losing 30 pounds, that's tremendous. You got to feel great.
I really do, man. It's wild. I feel like when I look at what God gave me, he gave me a very healthy body, man, and a healthy mind. And we have the ability to know, we can research all of it. And I don't know, for me personally, it's like I felt like I wasn't cherishing what God had given me. And now I have a little bit more clarity. I need to be, I can do better. And then the energy it gives you to do all the things that you want to do that we're complaining about not being able to do. You're like, oh, okay, I just had to put this in place first. And now these other things start falling into place.
That's wonderful. Well, before we close, a couple more questions. And first, what advice or what would you tell people who are thinking about and dealing with depression or even thoughts of suicide?
One of the things that people always say that suicide is the most selfish thing you can do. And if you just look at the facts of it, you can say, yeah, that is selfish. You're not thinking about anybody else. But what I know is the least selfish person in the world that I know did it. She did that for me. I understand that now, looking back at it. What I think, Paul, happened is, if you imagine like a reality is like you're in like a sphere of reality. And I think Natalie got so tunnel vision on one piece of that reality that she couldn't see anything else. What she was looking at was very real, but she couldn't see everything else. So I try to talk to people about backing up and not focusing on the one part of reality that you're focused on. And there is a bigger picture around. This too shall pass. I say that to myself on all sides, Paul, not just the darkness, the lightness will too, and I have a belief that I think you can only experience as much joy as you've had sadness. And if I believe that if we understood pain and darkness the way I think it is, that in our darkest moments, there'll be some gratitude because the joy that's going to come out of that, It's just the depth of pain to how much my joy can be. And I feel like it's really hard to do in that dark time, but if we really understood it in your darkest time, if you can say, this too shall pass, and my joy is going to be so great because of the depth of darkness I've been able to touch. So that's kind of the advice in a nutshell, and then more so than anything, give people grace, give yourself grace. You don't know. I don't care how much you think you know. They are telling you what they're going through. You do not know what they're going through. You do not know what is in their brain. And you don't know what I'm going through. I am being as transparent as I can, but you still don't know what I deal with on a daily basis internally. And when someone cuts you off at a red light or whatever the case is, give them grace. You don't know what they're dealing with today. If you did, you might feel completely different. And I always try to err on that side of things. And do I screw it up? Constantly. I do mess it up. But resetting and doing better the next time and learning from that, and just give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. I can't say it enough. And give others grace as well.
Well, thank you for that advice. That is very poignant and hopefully very useful to our listeners. You mentioned earlier, and I wanted to make sure I hit this before we closed out, but you've got a special charity on your heart, Like Lexie. And so maybe you can tell us a little bit about what that does, what serving on the board is meant to you, and kind of why this is on your heart so heavily.
Man, I'm really glad you asked about that. So I had a friend connect me with a girl named Andrea Mills, and that she wanted to talk to me about a suicide prevention project. And being completely honest with you, I didn't really want to talk about it. I've dealt so many of those projects, and I never had seen one that made a difference, and I felt like I was wasting my time. And come to find out, she didn't want to meet with me either. And we scheduled a 15-minute meeting, and we talked for 2 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, and this is, if God's ever put something together, this is it. And Andrea, her daughter committed suicide in 2019. 18 years old, absolutely beautiful. Her name is Lexie, and had everything going for her. And where with losing Natalie, I always wondered what happened. I kind of just gave in. I guess I'll never know what happened. Andrea had some clarity. God told her what happened and told her what went wrong. And so she is amazing. She's a little bitty person with all kinds of power and energy, man. If you ever doubt God, you just go meet Andrea Mills, and it comes out of her. It's amazing what she's done with her life. But she has written a program. She knows what her daughter needed. And what she has done is written a curriculum that gives other kids what she wished she would have given her daughter, now that she knows what her daughter needed. And it's a curriculum. It's not a one-day thing. We do a parent conference where we teach the parents what we're going to do and what the questions their kids are going to ask them. We do a teacher conference on how to teach the curriculum. And then we go into schools and we do a program where we tell kids the story of Lexie, and we give them tools on how to deal with suicide. Paul, right now, I don't even want to say this out loud. As of 2020, the number one thing that kills our teenagers right now is suicide.
How? I did not know that.
And it's number one, over vehicular accidents, number one. And we look at things like social media, all the tools that our generation gave these kids, but we didn't give them the tools to deal with the consequences that it can have. And what Andrea has done in the Like Lexie project and her team is they have written this 6-week curriculum. We have a secular and non-secular version of it, because a lot of public schools, as you know, we can't bring God into the story. It's all written in there, but it's not, it is secular, non-secular. And we're not here. This program is very clear. It's not to save people in a Christian standpoint. It's to save people's lives. That's what it's there for. And they put me in charge of the fundraising. So I'm getting able to use my connections and the things that I've built over my life and to raise money for this project. And it's a constant thing. I'm always trying to get money. As you know, all nonprofits are like that. But I've never been more crystal clear on what my mission is and that I'm doing the right thing with the life that's been given to me. Yeah, it's just really exciting, man. We're going to these schools, and Paul, the stories, man, when you see these kids that stand up, and if you'd ever, I'd love to have you, man, to come to one of our assemblies. Just so you
I'd love to.
Yeah, just come volunteer with me, man. Just go sit in the assembly. If anybody is seeing this, if anybody wants to come to an assembly or wants to hear more about it, man, I love to talk about it. I love to share it. When you see these kids stand up and support each other, and they walk across the gym to go sign the wall that they choose life, and the kids that come to it and they tell us the stories, man, and they had already made plans or they'd already made attempts, and that they see it differently now. I'm so crystal clear on why my life has been the way it is, and why I've been given the skills I've been given, and given the relationships I've been given, is to be in this arena to help save people.
Yeah. I love your t-shirt there. I choose life right there. And so it's so great to see it, not only hear it from you, but to see it right there across your chest. And so, Jason, thank you for your powerful testimony, for your words of wisdom, and for all of the things that you've shared with us today. It means a tremendous amount that you would take time out of your busy schedule, doing so many different things, obviously, to come here and be with us.
Well, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk, man. Like, having a platform to tell the story, and your platform in particular, it means a lot to me. And thank you so much for what you're doing, making the world a better place, man, helping men all over.
Thank you. Well, to our audience, thank you so much for listening in and having the opportunity to hear about Jason. As you know, we've switched this year from 1 podcast a month to 4 podcasts a month. We're super excited about being out there and having a chance to hear our voice on a more often basis, but to share so many of the stories that we know men want to hear and continue to need to hear. Please look for us on social media. Please look for us and sign up for our newsletter. Thank you so much and have a wonderful evening. Godspeed and good luck.